I found a picture of you, Gary, and playing against me back in the day. Right?
Were you behind me? Were you pinching me?
You're actually trying to hold me up because it looks like I'm about to take the ball off you.
Highly unlikely. Right. We have got a great replacement, someone that I know very well, someone that Alan knows very well, someone that we played against, which was always, let me say, not a pleasurable experience. And he's written a book called On the Edge, and it's basically the life and times of one Martin Keown. Brilliant stories in there of a lifetime in football, Martin. Arsène Wenger.
Yeah.
When he arrived, what was the first impressions? Because he wasn't very well known, not in this country. There's a lot of talk about that. He'd been obviously at Monaco, and then he went to my old club, Nagoya Grampus 8, and he was there, and he won the league with Nagoya Grampus 8, and I left them, and they were useless, and I was thinking, wow, when he won the league, this guy must have something. But what was he like when he walked through the door?
Well, we played in a game in the UEFA Cup. He flew in just to do the game, and it was all a bit bizarre. So we played Borussia Mönchengladbach in a UEFA Cup game, and he came in. He did this. I mean, it's not listed as one of his games, but it was his game. But we lost, so he doesn't really want it there. You know, we talked about it, we laughed about that, and he came in. He did all the team talk, and half time he came in. He was a bit disgruntled. He took Tony Adams off and went to a back four. You know, Tony wasn't having the best of games, but I hadn't seen anyone brave enough to take him off. So that was quite significant. There was a bit of anger with Tony, and it was kind of like, well, okay, does he know what he's doing here? You know, but he was the nicest guy, Gary, I've ever met. Do you know, calm, ill-fitting suit. His glasses were like milk bottles. Do you know, it was quite funny, really. He spoke not that much English. And then he flew off. We didn't see him again for a couple of months, and then he came in, and then it was really, we went to work. And it was meticulous. You know, he had stopwatch, whistle, everything was timed to minutes. You know, small-sided games would stop, usually with just winning goal. No, not a bit of that. Just penalties, we're going to play a certain time. And everything was on the floor. Obsessed with keeping the ball on the floor, one touch, two touch. And he had a tremendous belief in his players. He just, you know, we did one-on-one stuff with mannequins, chipping balls over. And we'd do run-throughs of different moves he wanted without opposition, build all that confidence up, and then on a match day say, right, you know the balls that I want you to play, that's your joy, you're the one who plays, you take to the pitch, I trust you to find the right pass. And that's what happened on match day. So it was very different to George. Everything was about being good defenders, but with Arsene it was about with the ball. Everything was the ball, and it was a joy. Every session was fantastic. It was a lot, though. We did a lot of training, did too much. He admitted that. And we missed out on making it into Europe that first, because he was there for sort of 8-9 months. And then we went on this journey to eventually winning the double. But overnight, Gary, the football changed.
It wasn't just the football, though, was it, Martin, from reading the book? It was the whole lifestyle and the way you looked at things and training and health and diet.
Incredible.
And fitness.
Yeah. Chew to win became a slogan. You know, like they educated us on how to. This chew to win.
Was that from the doctor that we had in
Dr.
Rougier, was it? Yeah.
Dr. Rougier, Jan Rougier.
We had him with England as well, didn't we? During '98, yeah.
Because Gary shared that with Glenn. So this guy was coming in. We were all taking the piss, chewing to win, but he was explaining to us how the blood would rush from your head to your stomach to help you to digest. You're using energy. We can't have that. We need to gain an advantage from our opponents. So everything was chew, sip. All the water was like room temperature water. It's too cold. You just pee it straight out. And I was doing all these stretches. I was taking all these supplements. I was chewing all this food, and I was feeling like Superman on the pitch.
Are we sure about what these supplements were?
I was taking zinc, magnesium, B12.
Yeah.
And iron, he used to say.
Iron, yeah. Iron brew.
So I remember playing against you guys so many times thinking, these guys are so strong, so quick, like look so fit. And then we had this guy with England in 1998, and he gave me all the stuff that you've just described. And I'm thinking, oh my God, This is why I felt as if I could jump 10
Same,
foot high.
same.
I could run
This
forever.
sounds incredibly
Honestly.
suspect.
And then you guys got lucky in the '98 Cup final.
Well, when I presented a gilt-edged chance to her.
Well, it was like on a tight angle when you slipped and didn't you?
Tell me, you two had some tussles, didn't you, on the pitch? You really did.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a few with Martin, but I was at the end of my career when Martin was at the beginning of his career. But you two, it's the same period. And there's some brilliant pictures. And actually, I saw Alan did a thing in your testimonial brochure, didn't he, talking about actually how he respected your mutual respect between you both. But God blimey, you must have been an aggressive pair.
So when I stepped out of the team, and whenever Colo would play you, I would give him most information about you, because the tussle to get the ball started way before it was delivered. So you used to try and create like a box around you so that you could push away to come onto the ball and receive it, yeah? And I was like, right, okay, you're not getting that, fella. You're not getting that platform when you play against me. So I was like, and even sometimes I'd stand in front of you, which you thought, hold on, that's brave, because this could go over my head, but I'll catch you. You ain't going to run away from me. So I created, and this tussle for the ball started, didn't it? Way before the fucking thing was delivered.
Yeah, we had some good old battles, didn't we?
Yeah.
We had some good battles. When you could get near me.
Yeah. You've scored the most goals in the Premier League, do you know? So it's like...
He never mentions it, Martin.
No.
Very
And
rarely.
it's like, but then you think yourself, well, hold on a minute. If I'm his most difficult opponent, or I'm in there, then it lifts you, do you know? But this is the thing about defenders. It's like, where do you sit in the Premier League defenders? Where do you, you look back and you think, okay, where am I? I used to go out and think, I'm going to make that afternoon the most difficult afternoon. Alan Shearer's never going to play against a more difficult opponent than me. That's how I used to make you. But that wasn't just for you. I did that for everyone. I just knew that if you were in front of goal, you were going to score.
I used to speak to Wrighty the night before and say, "Tell me what winds Martin up. What I can say to him to upset him."
Which brings me on actually nicely to the Ian Wright bit, because there's. Did he ever tell you about Alan Shearer? Did he ever say, right, Martin, put the kettle on?
Yeah. So do you know what was happening? Wrighty, honestly, Wrighty was like a middleweight boxer. I mean, but he always used to just sort of rush off and get in a scrap in the tunnel before you could help him. So, and there was one big thing with Steve Bruce once, and there was which get Ian to tell you about that. So the club weren't very happy, but I said to Ian, look, we need a call. We need like the rugby team was 999, wasn't it? The famous Lions tour. Whenever there was a scrap, everyone throw a punch. You couldn't do that, obviously. So I said, look, I'll tell you what, if you just say to me, get the kettle on, let's call it get the kettle on. I know that I've got to run to the tunnel. And that means you're going to be in a bit of trouble, So John Arsene was involved as well. John's like a brute, isn't he? So we played against Coventry in this particular game, and is it the guy Daesh, like Liam Daesh?
Yeah, Liam. Yeah,
hands like shovels, didn't he? So there's an issue with him.
To be at
and
Portsmouth
John,
as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So and then Gary McAllister's involved, and Wrighty didn't like Gary McAllister at all. So anyway, we rushed to the tunnel, and then luckily we're there just in time because it's all gone off everyone, And then the funniest thing about that, Gary, is we're sitting in the tunnel, we're sitting in the dressing room. There's a knock at the door, it's Ken Fryer. And he's come in, he said, our police want to arrest 3 players. Ian Wright, John Arsene and me. And the boss went, Ken, for fuck's sake, go and arrest their players. We are the home team. Fucking hell, sort it out. Yeah? And that was it. Never heard another word about it after that. Yeah. But no, Wrighty was funny. You know what, Gary? His personality, it was like Eddie Murphy in the dressing room. Yeah. And it was like, it was laugh a minute.
Forever, yeah.
Laugh a minute. And it was like, he had something magical. And when he left the dressing room, I was worried. I thought we might dip a bit. I was more worried about him leaving the dressing room than I was leaving the pitch. But if he'd have stepped back from his ego, because he had to be, you strikers have to be number one, If he'd have stepped back a little bit and thought, okay, do you know what, I'll do another season. Nicholas Anelka's now come into the fore and I can weigh in with a dozen goals. I think we could have been champions again in 1999. But I understand, right, he wanted to go. I think he went to West Ham. He still was on a journey, but what a character. Fantastic character.
You had a lot of highlights, Martin, at Arsenal. What would you pick out? What were you best for you? There's titles and all sorts in there, Invincibles.
Well, whenever you win something for the first time, so when we won the league against Everton, that was a day in the sun, was incredible. We went on this journey of winning, I think it was 12 matches to chase down Manchester United. So that was, kind of being accepted in with Tony. We formed a great partnership there. I don't think we conceded a goal in the last 12 matches till we become champions, and then we had the FA Cup to look forward to. When we won the league at Manchester United at Old Trafford in 2002, Gary, we climbed the football mountain then. We were sitting right on the top looking down on everyone, and to go and win it at Old Trafford, and they knew we were better than them.
I'm not sure they'll agree with you. They
won't agree, but you hear Gary Neville say, don't you, the 99 team was the best team he ever played against. Somehow they managed to beat us in that semi-final. They're down to 10 men, by the way. There was some intervention taking place. When I saw them win the European Cup the way they did, I laughed because we'd been on the receiving end ourselves. Somehow they won a treble that year, but we were never even talked about, and we were on course for 2 back-to-back doubles until April in 1999. Such was our quality of our play, but we never won a thing. So 2002, to be then ahead of them, they were always the team, weren't they, Manchester United?
That was your rivalry, wasn't it? Arsenal,
yeah,
Manchester.
it's incredible rivalry.
Time, it was extraordinary. Tell us the intensity of it as well. And obviously there are a few episodes in the tunnel, and this leads me on nicely to you have a whole chapter in the book on Ruud van Nistelrooy incident. Yeah. So tell us, Ruud van Nistelrooy.
Could have had one on Alan as well, by the way. But if Alan had gone to Manchester United, it would have been Alan, wouldn't it? I think it might have been easier with Alan, to be honest. I could trust Alan as an opponent. I couldn't trust Ruud.
What does that mean?
Well, because he was quite physical, quite a nasty individual, and then he'd go over like a pack of cards in the box, just collapse. And you're trying to pick him up, and he's trying to buy a cheap foul or a free kick. I don't think Alan was quite like that. It was kind of a bit tougher, a bit harder. Mark Hughes was exactly the same, You knew what you were getting. So there was a distrust from Ruud. Look, that's all gone now. If I saw him now, I did try to shake his hand actually at the semi-final that year when they beat us in the FA Cup to say, sorry, don't take it personally. Although he jumped back away from me, I think he was frightened.
I was just about to say to you, all these rivalries. And I had loads. I had them with you, with Peter Schmeichel, with Roy Keane. You go through all your career with having all these fights and scraps. And then you get to the end of it and you end up working with these guys and you think, actually, they're not so bad after all. They're actually decent guys. You must have worked with some of them and thought they're all right, no?
Alan, I've apologised to so many people since I finished playing. It's ridiculous. I go in and I go, really sorry about, because there was a period when one or two I pinched.
Well, I've never had a sorry.
I didn't pinch you, I don't think. But I remember pinching Vialli. And the guy was like so.
That's
calm.
what you should have called the book, Martin. I remember pinching Vialli. Luca Godrich.
I did it for a reaction to see what. Okay, can they deal with this? Do you know? But no, Gary, you used to keep like a mental note, the black book of how it was. There were some you could kick, some you couldn't, some you just didn't annoy. There was a funny story with Dennis Bergkamp one day because I said to Dennis, I don't really feel, I'm not in the mood, I'm feeling a bit, not aggressive. I said to Dennis, just give me a little slap on the side of the face. And he hits me, Alan, he hits me so hard that I go staggering across the dressing room and having to run out onto the pitch after him because he just belted me. So Dennis was another one actually, Gary, to spend a dressing room with Dennis Bergkamp. And some of those players, Gary, were some of the best players that have ever kicked a ball.
Who were the best that you played with?
Henri and Bergkamp. Henri was when he found a rhythm and a style to go with that. Everything was about pace, but he then started to find a swagger, a little bit of a pose, that you can do. A high speed, everything was high speed. And if he could embarrass you, when he first came in, I was kicking the shit out of him in training to try and toughen him up.
You do surprise me.
Well, no, I thought he needed it, but
we all need
and the same with Anelka. He was another great talent. I mean, when he used to get the ball, I used to giggle when I knew what they were up against. I'd be training against these people every single day, and everyone else played them twice a year. You know, but I had Henry every day. The gaffer would put, even at 38, I'm training with Henry. So, but Dennis Vieira as a player doesn't get enough mentions. He ran the midfield.
Amazing. Yeah.
Ran the midfield. I put him ahead of Roy Keane. Roy's a better pundit, but I think Patrick was a better player. So I'll give Roy something. But yeah, I mean, there's so many. Overmars, you know, goodness me, Overmars was so quick. It was like, honestly, you got all these players come in the dressing room, you're like, wow, it's like, how can we not win something? We should have won a whole lot more.
I'd like to talk a little bit about your England career. In fact, you two, Alan will remember this as well, you made your debut on the same day. I believe that's right.
Rob Jones played that
against France.
Yeah,
and we won 2-0. Al scored in the first half. I came on and scored in the second half. So you know that was it was a great start. And did you think you didn't get a fair rap? I think particularly in 96, I think you were exceptionally disappointed to miss out on the squad.
That was tricky. You know, like not to be involved. I felt like a little bit. I mean, Alan he made it there, and you're watching all these guys that you played with doing great things on your doorstep, and you really wanted to be involved, and you couldn't be involved. And it was like, strangely, I was the Arsenal Player of the Year that year. Tony didn't play the last sort of 15 games of the season. Somehow managed to do what he did on the pitch in the Euros. I don't know how Tony did that. And there I was watching. So with a great deal of anger, thinking that and I think that was the journey I was on. I should have been involved, really. There's no doubt I should have been. And once I made it into the England team 92, I fell out the back door of that, got injured, Gary, in that tournament in Sweden. The patellar tendon came off the kneecap. You guys probably wouldn't have known this. So I had surgery on my knee. Then I couldn't really get back involved, certainly under Terry. And it was hard to watch. So when we played Germany in Charleroi in 2000, I thought, right, this is a game I really wanted to play in before. There's no way they're beating us. I think Alan scores the winning goal that day. And I think I was man of the match. I know that's what the papers tell me, looking through the clips.
Alan disagrees.
No, I got man of the match, Martin.
I can feel another fight coming on, Gary. Yeah. But I just felt unfulfilled playing for England. I kept, lots of false starts. Played 43 games. Captained one occasion, and probably should have played. I mean, to be still playing for England, I was I think I was the 7th oldest outfield player to ever play for England. So what am I doing still playing at that age? But I couldn't get into 26.
The 98 story, Martin's quite interesting in the fact that Glenn Hoddle you were in the squad, obviously.
Yeah.
And he told you were going to play in the big knockout games. Is that right?
Yeah, he did, yeah.
That's quite unusual, isn't it? So, but you're not playing now.
Glenn had a lot of vision of what he saw the competition to be. And I was kind of like, call me old-fashioned, like the games are big from the start. The opponents are big from the start. So why is it I'm not going to play? And he was like, no, I've got a plan for you to play later in the tournament. And he was playing Gary Neville, I think, in a 3. I think Gareth Southgate. To be fair to Gareth has said to me, Martin, I feel a bit embarrassed. You're playing in front of me. That's the sort of guy Gareth is, isn't it? A great guy. Gone on to have an incredible managerial career. And he was saying, you should be playing. But for some reason, Glenn wasn't able to make that step. And I was quite suited with my mobility to play in a 3 or to play as a marker. That's why I felt I could have played in 96. People like Parker was playing there. I think Southgate was playing there. Gary, you know what? At one stage, it got embarrassing. I was seeing all these people play for England. They take nothing away. And I was thinking, I should be in there. And I actually gave up at one point. I thought, there's obviously something in my game where they're just not having me. So when I eventually got in with you guys, it was a relief to make it in there. Do you know? I was talking to John Barnes about, because Carlton Palmer was in those squads, wasn't he? And John Barnes was in those squads. And in that game we played a 3 at the back, and I played with Des Walker that day, and we beat France, a decent French team. But we never had the services of Mark Wright for that tournament. He was injured. We went with 19 players. We didn't have John Barnes. And I think actually when you look at it, we were only just a few pieces away from actually doing quite well in that tournament. So I never had Gaza, did we, around that point? I think Gaza was injured.
Yeah.
So it never quite worked out. You got to have the right people together at the right time, right ingredients of experience, Gary. I would look in that tunnel. I remember looking in that tunnel that first game and thinking, God, there's only really Gary here that's got experience. Where's the 1990 World Cup squad gone?
Yeah, we lost a lot of the players, didn't we? And bizarrely, he left out both Beardsley and Waddle, Graham Taylor.
And we just needed their experience.
Yeah.
So whenever I see it now, I think it's really important that they have a good experienced squad, which we do now. Look at the team now. They're all so experienced, aren't they, in major tournaments?
Martin, I don't know whether you remember when we used to meet up with England. You mentioned earlier about you left Arsenal for the sake of 50 quid, and then you're discussing contracts here and there. And all your teammates at Arsenal used to come in and tell us, with Martin with a contract. If you just, we were waiting for you in the bar or on the bus, thinking, how can we wind Martin up? And we drop in really loudly just as you're walking towards us. It was like, I don't know, for argument's sake, use Steve Howie as an example. Steve Howie, you've turned down 30 grand a week. And then just as you were walking by, and then you'd go straight up to your Arsenal mate and gone, can you believe Steve Howie's on fucking 30 grand a week and I'm only on this? It's like, you used to just sort of drop that in for you all the time to see how quick you'd go and mention it to your Arsenal team.
He obviously had an effect on me.
And he was probably only on about 2 or 3, I'll say only, but he was on 2 or 3.
No wonder I was kicking the Newcastle players.
We had Thierry Henry on the podcast a few months ago. And he told the story about how he just wanted to live up to his father's expectations. I sense there was a bit of that about you as well. Yeah,
I mean, my dad was a strong man, like a man's man. He'd be at the pub on a Friday. He'd have to have his drink, with the lads. He loved his comedy. We had a very similar. Probably you don't realise, but I really like my comedy. And we had a lot in common, but he never played football. But he was always the quickest at school, wherever he was. He was a farmer. He was on the farm from the age of 14. So he never really had a proper education, but he went into management. When he came to the UK, he kind of travelled up through the job. And I had a tremendous amount of respect for him. His decision-making was quite remarkable. So he'd watch the games, watch me play, and he'd say, well, he used to accuse me of being a ball watcher. And I used to be a centre forward like you two. Can you believe, playing for my local Sunday League team?
I can't believe that, Martin. I cannot believe. When I saw that, that was the first thing I wrote down in my notes. He started out as a forward.
But didn't we all do that? I mean, the ball would be played over the top, and I'd run after it. I had a lot of pace in those days, and a bang, goal. And I literally used to score dozens of goals. And my dad would get in the car, and there'd be a massive row. You scored 6, you could have had 10. What's wrong with you? And but it was good. But I knew he was in my corner, Gary. Although he was criticising me, but he believed in me.
So he was tough on you, was he?
He was. Oh yeah. But years later, I kind of tried to explain this with managers that I felt really believed in me, and trusted me and got the best out of me. Although 1 or 2 I felt didn't really believe in me, and I could just see through it. But with my dad, he loved me. He rated me, and that brought the best out of me. And to be honest, years later, I use the word love because people don't use love in football, but Wenger trusted and cared for me in a way that no other manager did, and he got the best out of me. And it was very similar to the way my dad was. Just, solid in the background. I believe in you, son. You'll find a way.
Obviously, the early segment is the fact that you're obviously Irish roots.
Yeah.
You can tell that from your name. And you suffered a little bit at school from that because it was the time, obviously, with the IRA were around the country, and it sounded really difficult.
Yeah, because we had a shop. We had a mini supermarket, an early type of supermarket. And we sold alcohol. We sold Newcastle Brown Ale, which is another story. Which is when I first got into football, Newcastle, Liverpool, 74, when they were kind of all these Newcastle fans down from the north piling into the shop, and they suggested I go and play football. But the stuff about being Irish, there was graffiti on the shop window. The vending machines were all vandalised, and you were getting called, you Irish bastard in the street.
Yeah.
In fact, as people still see me now, we thought you were Irish. You know, they saw me go and play for England. So all of that was difficult, but you can understand the tensions, Gary, because there's all these bombings going along in Birmingham, Guildford, and people were becoming nervous. So we were part of the Catholic community, the church, and everybody like looked out for each other. And that was a difficult period growing up. So that's when I remember Dad, you know, we were kids saying, right, you need to learn to get your 2 fists up, and get your fists up and, you know, protect yourself, you know. So that we did that in the garage, all 3 of us as kids, you know, because it was getting a bit hairy. Probably did a bit too much of that throughout my childhood. But we kind of had to fight.
And your career, mine. And
my career. and my career.
That's where it come from, then. That's why you got so nasty on the pitches. That's where it came from.
Yeah. But it was an interesting one because we didn't really belong in Ireland either. We'd go on holiday to Ireland and they'd say, you're plastic paddies. Ah, Jesus, you're plastic paddy, you know, get out of here, you know. And it was like, well, hold on, where do we belong here? Are we Irish? Are we English? And I thought, there's nothing plastic about me, guys. I'm not going to play football for you. You've missed your chance.
You answer the question later in the book about, because I was thinking at that stage whether you were interested in playing for Ireland or England. Obviously, you did play for England many times.
Not to 26.
But you answered it towards the end of the book that actually you Jack Charlton, of course he approached you, of course he tried to get you, but you'd already played for England youth
21.
teams. So.
Yes. In those days, Gary, you couldn't go back.
That's right, you couldn't go back, so you didn't have that choice. If you'd have had the choice given to you at a certain age, right, England or Ireland, which one would it have been?
Well, I was English. My father said to me, son, I've come to this country. I've taken all the benefits of this country. You're English. You're not Irish. You're English. Now, we watched the TV. We were watching Kevin Keegan score goals for England. We weren't watching Liam Brady play for Ireland. You know, so there was something big about my dad where we embraced everything about the new culture that he came into. And he had very good reason to be bitter about, you know, the English, because of the relationship has always been a tricky one with the Irish and English for generations, you know. But he put all that to one side and said, no, you play for England. So there was never really a debate. I just followed that journey. But Gary, 26 years of age, I get in the Arsenal first team at 19. What was I doing until the age of 26? It's a joke. And I'm still playing for England at nearly 36. So there's a lot of question marks. And I think it was the journey I was on when I left Arsenal put me into free fall a little bit in terms of reputation.
Let's talk about that early journey then, Martin, because you started at Arsenal and you were there for a while, but you had your struggles, didn't you? Firstly with injuries and illness, and also a bizarre relationship with a chap called Tommy Coleman. Tell us.
Tommy Coleman was a youth team manager, yeah.
That you lived with for a while. And, well, tell the story.
When you go to live in you've both done it. Alan went down to Southampton, you go into digs and you're reliant on where you end up. And it was all great when I was doing my trials with nice families, and then suddenly there wasn't anywhere to stay. So I went and stopped with Tommy. And Tommy had been a part-time coach previously, but now he was full-time. So you're coming home and you're with the youth team manager, you know, making the tea. There's never any kind of respite. So in my wisdom, I went to see Steve Birkinshaw, head of the youth team department, said, look, I think it'd be better if I moved somewhere else. But Tommy took that personally, and so did his wife. And she literally wanted to just fling me out like that very night. And he said, look, you've made life murder for me now, and so I'm going to make life difficult for you. And he did. So it became quite tricky. He told Don Howe that I wasn't as good as the other players. There was 8 of us, Gary, in this youth team, and we must talk about that youth team.
Yeah, your golden generation.
Yeah, and Niall Quinn and Paul Merson are both in that. Niall came in out of the from abroad as a pro, but we had Rocastle, Thomas, Tony. There were 6 of us that made it as full internationals, and 8 of us that made it into the first team. There's nearly 5,000 games there in first class football, so there was a hell of a group that I came into. So it wasn't an easy. I mean, every day was a battle, you know. So, and everyone was so good, you didn't really know how good you were. That was a little bit, but certainly Tommy made that more difficult for me. I was signing a contract as a young kid, and Don Howe said, right, you're going to get less money than everyone else. So I said, Don, you come tomorrow and watch then. If you think I'm not as good as the rest, you do yourself a favour and come and watch. And then on the Monday morning, he said, "Martin, not a problem. Of course, you're as good as them. You played brilliantly. I don't know what the problem is." But I couldn't shout out that Tommy was putting the thumb on me, because it's very difficult, isn't it? You just have to get on with it.
Have you seen him since?
No, he's passed now.
Right.
He tried to get together with me. They got rid of him, actually. He didn't last too long at the club. I don't know why that was. But I've made my peace with it, really, because it's like, you know, the thing was, when I went to Gary, the appendicitis story was I mean, if you've got kids of your own, you know, and when you start to have, you know, you suddenly look at it differently, don't you? And that's why now you think, hold on, I was forced to go on a trip abroad. I broke and dislocated my elbow, and I had to go to France to watch. And because he rang me up and said, "You're not having a holiday, fella. We're on holiday. You've not got your feet up. You come with us." And then I started getting grumbling appendix problem. In 3 days, I was literally lying in the dormitory. Yeah, I can't go out. I'm in too much pain. And I thought, I'm dying. I'm literally dying. And I had a voice in my head saying, "You better do something." Italian team next door didn't speak English. And Steve Rowley, he was a club scout, you may have heard that name. He just turned up in the car park. And I used to say to him every day I saw him after that, "You saved my life. If you didn't turn up." He went off, he's gone for a few hours. But eventually they got medical care to me, and I went straight in. I had peritonitis in the end, where the appendix burst. And that was all around that, Gary. It was all around that coach, you know. So, in fact, I started pre-season with a big hole in my side, and I couldn't straighten my elbow because I'd broken, dislocated my elbow. But I didn't want to sit in the medical room for another pre-season because I'd gone through a lot of that. So things weren't great at the start of this journey.
Obviously, you became one of the Arsenal greats, but that didn't happen in the first period. You just didn't feel like you were treated like everybody else.
Well, Gary, in that first, I made 21 appearances on the bounce in that Arsenal first team and went in at 19. It was nothing. It was transformational because obviously me and Tony are young kids in the same youth team. Tony gets in at 17. They send me straight out on loan, telling me I was really close. There's nothing in it. And then I don't make my debut to 19. But by the time I leave, I've actually played more games than Tony at this point. So it was all set fair. And for years, people kept saying, "Oh, you left because Tony was coming through." It was nothing. I've put that record straight, hopefully now, because it was like, they used to say you can't have two young central defenders play together. But of course, we weren't going to stay young forever, were we? But we weren't being kind of nurtured and developed. We were being pushed against one another a little bit.
Yeah. Basically, you left Arsenal over 50 quid, right?
Yeah, 50 quid.
So,
not 50 grand like Ashley Cole.
Explain, Martin.
What happened with 50 quid, Martin?
Well, Don Howe had been the manager, and he advised me not to sign the previous contract. So I was basically being offered 250 first year to 300 second. And Don said, "Look, if you get in the first team, Martin, this 300 won't be 300. It's going to be way more. So just sign for the year." So I did. Played 21 games in the first team, and they offered me £300 a week the next season. And it was like, well, hold on. Don's now left the club, and no one seemed to recognise me in the building. We played against Gary's Everton. I think it was right at the end of that season. Gary, that's the year you got, was it 40 goals you got?
I don't like to mention it, Martin, but yes.
You didn't get any that day, by the way.
Really? I was wondering how long it was going to take.
I think the game at Goodison, we beat you about 6.
I wasn't playing that day.
And I definitely bagged a couple, but go on. Yeah. But that's why, because you weren't in the opposition.
Well, no, I wasn't even thought about it, actually. So, I remember we were playing that day, and Steve Burkinshaw said, "You're the two best young central defenders in the country. You, Tony Adams." And then I referred to that when we were at the negotiating table just a few months later. Well, we're playing against Gary Lineker. You're telling me I'm the best in the country, and now I want 50 back. I said, I'm not looking for a fortune. Just give me £100 a week extra, not 50. They said, "No way, can't do it." So it all became a point of principle. And then I sat down in front of Ken Fryer, and then the day I met George came in, and it was really surreal. George was tapping his watch.
George Graham, you're talking about?
George Graham. Sitting outside his office, Gary, with Paul Davis, Tony Woodcock, Noel Quinn, quite a group of us. I sat for our last one in, of course. Sat there for about 3-4 hours, and I went in and he's tapped his watch and he's saying, "Hey, Martin, great to see you. But I've got no time." I promised his wife to go on holiday.
Was he French?
Yeah, French, yeah. So, me, no mistake, there'll be changes. That was his regular line.
Yeah.
So, anyway, yeah. So, we had a quick discussion. We talked about how I was unhappy with Charlie Nicholas, Graham Ricks. We were having to reroute through the West End. My second game for Arsenal. Second game for Arsenal was Liverpool at home. We won 1-0. And then we beat 2-0. And then we beat Man United away. And on the way trip back, we had to go through the West End. And Charlie started getting changed with his leathers on and Graham Ricks.
So you went to the West End to drop them off?
To drop them off so they could go to the night spots, And I thought, this is ridiculous. And we actually turned up at Old Trafford and they're playing cards. And I said, I need to get off the bus. No one gets off until this game's finished. So when I sat down with George, he asked me, what did I think about the professionalism? This is what we were talking about. I said, this got to change. This club's fucking it's ridiculous, So, and then we didn't have much time to talk about me. He took a position. So I said, look, I'm off. You've made a mistake. I'm off. And he said, where are you going? I said, I don't know. But I ain't staying here because you're not showing the respect that I deserve. And I literally jumped off a mountain at that point because I climbed a mountain to get in that first team. Let me tell you, it was that difficult to get in.
Yeah. You moved to Aston Villa, didn't you?
Yeah.
And you're quite very frank and honest in the book that you regretted that decision, didn't you?
Immediately, yeah. I went on holiday, woke up quite upset really. I thought, what have I done? All I ever wanted to do was get in the Arsenal team. People who were there on holiday coming up to me in the street, never experienced that before really. Oh, what a great season you had. And I couldn't tell them that I'd already quietly signed for Villa and they'd put this contract in a vault because it was kind of an illegal approach.
Doug Ellis.
And I could have unravelled it all, Gary. But my dad said, no, you got to stick by your word, son. You can't unravel all this. You just do it. The strange thing was, Rocastle rang me and said, I want to come too. He rang me and said, because his contract was the same. The club then said to me, that's when I thought, okay, maybe I could unravel it because the club said, we'll be in all sorts of trouble if Rocastle comes too. So I kind of, the first day in training, Paul Elliott comes up to me. I like Paul a lot. I was with him at the recent England game. And he said, what have you come here for? And I was looking around the building and thinking, what on earth have I come here for? So it was I never really gave Villa another chance after that. What I saw when I came, the lack of professionalism stunned me. I went to see Ron Wiley after about 3 days of pre-season and said, we're going to get relegated if we don't. We're jogging around the pitch here. Everything with Donau was so professional. And he said to me, look, we'll be fine, but we got relegated.
You've gone from Arsenal, where you've said they're dropping the players off on the West End, they can't get off the bus till the card game's finished, where you've gone from oh my God, this is the lack of professionalism here is mad. And then you go to Aston Villa, it's even worse.
Yeah. So the thing is, so I'm setting high standards here and I'm thinking, because when I went back to Arsenal years later, I did sit in the pocket and just listen and learn. And, because what am I looking for? I'm back now at the club I want to be at. When I went to Everton, it was, because see, the thing was, I didn't get on well with alcohol. When I saw people getting bollocksed, I thought they weren't being serious. I know there's a time for all of that, and there's a balance to be had. Literally, players were playing in card schools, and they were buying friendships. And I'm I don't buy friendships. I'm going to be me, and that's how I was. And I did fall out with a lot of those. Charlie Nicholas. If I could smell alcohol off him, there was issues. So Arsenal was just an adjustment, Alan, to get to where they needed to. Villa was structurally, the whole way the club was, there was huge problems at the club. And the quality of the player was nowhere near what I'd left.
Right.
The guys at Arsenal I was watching them over my shoulder, winning League Cups. Your Rocastles and Thomases, look at the goal he scores against Liverpool. These are all out of the same youth team. And when I went there in training, I could go up front and almost be the best player. And it was that didn't happen at Arsenal. So the standard wasn't the same.
At that point, Graham Taylor came in, though, didn't he? I imagine things changed in terms of professionalism when he was in charge.
Singularly, he made the most impact of any manager that I ever managed under. First impressions, Gary, absolutely incredible. When he came in.
How did he do that?
Well, first of all, we didn't know that he was coming in, and he came in. Doug Ellis introduced him to the training ground. He walked in, and it was really. He basically looked at everyone and said, "Well, he asked the chairman to leave." And he said he said that the difference between me and all the previous managers is that I've chosen Doug Ellis. He didn't choose me, so I'm in charge, not him. And then he said, if anybody wants to go through that door, there it is. I can see you all looking at it. You want to go now, you fuck off. I'm a successful type personality, and anyone who comes with me will be successful. It's a foregone conclusion. We will get promoted. Trust me. And then he looked around the room, and he looked at Tony DeRigo, actually, I haven't put that bit in. And he's like, you're being tapped up. You're going to Chelsea. I know you are, because I've just come from another club and your agent's been fucking ringing me every week. So he had all the insight on every player. So there was no escape.
Yeah.
But Gary, he turned that club around. It was remarkable what he did. It was very functional. It wasn't purist football.
Well, we know that. I sense, Martin, that you had let's say a love-hate relationship with him.
Yeah.
To a degree. Would that be fair?
Yeah.
That's what I felt from the book.
Yeah, definitely. I just feel that, like, it could have given me the tools to become a leader at the club. Looking back, I wasn't looking to be a leader. I can tell you now, I was looking to get out. I think there were 22 players came and went that first pre-season when he came in. It was a revolving door. You didn't know who was going out next. And I had opportunities to go to Manchester United as well. I didn't push it. He told me unexpectedly, you'll play next season if we don't get promoted in the top division. I didn't push and pursue that. I wanted Arsene Wenger.
Martin, only a fool turns down Manchester United.
Well, there's more than one fool on this conversation. To be honest, that's the thing I admire about Alan most of all, that he never went to Manchester United. And he played for the club that he loved most of all. Newcastle was his boyhood club. I think there's a lot to be said for that. He'd have a bag full of medals now, but never mind.
Would I be happier?
Before you managed to get back to your boyhood club, the team that you really wanted to play for, Martin, you went to Everton, but you had a variety of options.
Gosh, yeah.
One of them was Nottingham Forest, and you came across the great late Brian Clough. That was quite an experience.
This guy was the most charismatic man I've ever spent time with. I went into his office and he locked the door behind him, by the way. And he was like, hey, young man, this is better be good. And he came in and he was like, let fucking dog in room, he speaks more sense than thee. And I sat down, 3-piece suite, TV, bar, what do you want to drink? I said, I'll have a cup of tea, fuck off. I'll have an alcoholic drink, So he was sat with whiskey. And for 3 hours, he grilled me for 3 hours. We everything, politics, women, you name it, music, football. I remember he said to me, what's your biggest asset? What's your best thing you're good at? I said, probably pace. How quick are you? And I said, as quick as Des. And he went, no one's as quick as our fucking Des. It was
Des Walker.
Des Walker.
Yeah.
You never beat Des Walker. But I just felt, Gary, there was he maybe gone past his best.
Yes.
And so we went to see Arthur Cox. I think Trevor Francis was on the phone. Colin Harvey, of course, at Everton. There was an array of clubs that were looking to take me back, but not Arsenal at that point.
While we're on the subject of Brian Clough,
Yeah.
You've got something in common with Alan. You've both been booted by Brian Clough.
Yeah. I got booted by him as well, Martin.
Did you?
I did, yeah.
Tell me about that.
We played at Wembley in the the Zenith Data Systems Cup final, I think it was. And then we played at the Dell, and after the game at the Dell, before the game, I think remember the stairs. You used to walk down at the Dell to get to the pitch. Yeah, he booted me as I was coming down the stairs. I'd looked around.
Only Brian could get away with that.
Yeah, I know.
Do you know because that week I was getting married at the end of that week, Gary.
Yeah.
And every day I was going to a top club, and he sent flowers and a vase to my wife to be Nicola. And when he found out I was going to Everton, he asked for them back. He rang up and said, "Tell him I want flowers back. Fucking chocolates." Brilliant, isn't it?
You eventually chose Everton, Martin. How was your time there?
Just take you back to Old Trafford. I had talks with Sir Alex Ferguson, and it was surreal. I remember stood behind him, and he got this pack of keys, and he's trying to get the green doors that you got at the ground, because they were only offering me half the wages that Everton were offering me. And it was kind of like, well, I said to him, it's not about money. Tell me why I should be here. And I asked him a question about what do I do? Family, and he gave me all the wrong answers. And it was this surreal thing where I thought, well, okay, there's no red carpet. Hardly anyone knows I'm here. They've been trying to sign me for 2 seasons. They signed actually Gary Pallister shortly after that. So I think that was going on in the background. And I didn't sense he wanted me. So I took off to Everton. You know Colin Harvey, probably one of the nicest men in football. Probably not a manager, as we know. But very quickly he left, lost that job. And then Gary came back through the door as the assistant manager to Howard Kendall, which was all a bit bizarre.
Yeah, just a few days later, wasn't it?
Just a few days later. So there was 2 bosses in the room. But that was quite a volatile dressing room. You guys had won a lot of things, and a lot of players had been allowed to leave, the likes of Peter Reid and Paul Bracewell. And the new guys coming in, who'd been there just a couple of years before me, your Tony Cottis, your Pat Nevins and these types of players, weren't really accepted by the older players. And to be honest, I learned from all of this at Arsenal.
You ended up having a fight with Kevin Sheedy, didn't you?
I did. I regret that. Yeah, I agree. But that was the problem with that, Gary, was my brother was turned up at a hotel. We'd been out for the day. These famous Chinese afternoons how it would set up. Yeah,
so I experienced those.
Colin, yeah. And I said to my brother, "I'll meet you afterwards because I don't want to involve you with the rest of the players." When Kevin Sheedy started to attack me in terms of when he started getting personal with my brother over certain things, which I wouldn't reveal. Dave Watson was asking me to sort it out. So that's what happened. But, it was in full view of the whole public, and because we'd all been had a drink, nobody really... But we never got to the bottom of it, Gary. We didn't really... we had a team meeting after that. And to be honest, the players were saying I was the problem. And I certainly wasn't the problem. The problem had been there 2 years before me. And it's just about acceptance, Gary.
Yeah.
The acceptance of, when you're winning things and you have to create change, people have to go with it. And that group wasn't prepared to see new faces around them. I know they're setting high standards, but some of us were good enough, actually, to win things there as well. But they weren't embracing us.
You had an unusual relationship with Howard Kendall. You ended up
Brilliant
a chauffeur.
Yeah.
Sort of.
I remember when I eventually got to play football with you guys, he knocks on my door. How many managers do that now? And said, "Martin, I've got some great news for you. You're in the England squad." And he said, "Can I come in?" I said, "Yeah, of course you can come in." And he said, "Get me one of those man of the match bloody champagne bottles that you've got gathering dust." So we went in, he'd get a champagne out, and then he raised a toast for that. I thought he was a special man. He was a top coach. He knew the game really well. I think he was probably drinking a little bit too much. And there was a game that an early game, away game, came back, and I followed him home because we lived very close to one another. And the car was, a little bit all over the place. So I said to him, "Boss, look, I'll take you home after the away games. I'll just do it, say nothing to anybody." Yeah. So that's what we did. So for about 18 months, I did that and he told me, actually, I was going to Arsenal. We'd have all these conversations. "Look, Martin, if we go out of the cup, George Graham says he wants you. Just keep your head down. Do what you need to do between now and I'll protect you. But really, it looks like you're going to be late. If we go out of the cup, you're out of it."
You eventually got what was probably your wish to get back to Arsenal. How did that come about?
He dragged me into his office on a Friday afternoon, and he had champagne out. And he said, "Look, because I was trying to negotiate a new deal at Everton to try and force, although he told me privately, it's going to happen. It wasn't happening. And I said, "Okay, then let's do a deal here." Because I'm not, I did actually enjoy, by this stage, I was enjoying my football at Everton. So he said, no, we're not going to give you an offer. We are accepting an offer from Arsenal. But he said, "Look, the wages are not great there. So I'm not really sure if you're going to sign. But you're not playing tomorrow. I'm pulling you out of the game because they've offered $2 million for you and we need that money." So I headed down south, but I'd already been in negotiations with Arsenal. I knew what they were going to pay, and I just accepted that, okay. I mean, at the time, Blackburn were the ones, they weren't really interested, I don't think, at that point, but they were paying like a whole different set of wages.
Alan knows that.
Alan knows that. Yeah. So anyway, we went down and I basically signed Garrett, accepted it. I thought, okay, I left the club over the finances. I know the finances aren't fantastic. I had something inserted into my contract from Tony Stevens, who I felt let down by. But we had a contract. We had a clause in there that I would remain one of the top paid players, and that wasn't adhered to through the contract. And Tony Stevens kind of like wriggled out of that because it was his word against the chairman's word. He brought David Platt into the club later on down the line, but it wasn't the prodigal son returning. I can tell you, the fans were kind of like quite judgmental. I'd been away now, becoming international. The team had been very successful. The back four was in position, Gary, and it was going to be like, who's going to be the one that breaks this back four down? And that wasn't an easy thing because they were quite united, and Tony Adams didn't want to play with me in that team. George Graham, in fact, that's not in the book, but George Graham told me, Tony says he doesn't want to play with you. But, Tony was not the person I knew as a young kid. I think the alcohol was really playing a part then. And this was a different Tony Adams, a different Paul Merson to the guys I'd seen in the youth team, Gary. They were on a pedestal.
Yeah.
They'd won things. They were known throughout the world, well, for Europe, huge stars. And I was like, okay, I preferred them as they were. But what was interesting was that they came back to the people that I remember when they kind of like come out of all their addictions, because both players had a lot of troubles. And I got to see the best of them again.
I'll tell you what, Martin. It's for someone that doesn't like alcohol. You've had played with some characters, both as players and managers over the years, haven't you? Jesus, it's incredible.
I know.
I mean, you mentioned Charlie Nicholas, the nights out, and then you go to Villa and the problems there. Then you go to Everton, and Howard Kendall loved a pint.
They were all drinking because they to put up with me.
And then you go back to Arsenal. It's like, you ever thought it might be you?
Yeah. Do you know what?
Drives them to drink.
Yeah, it probably was. John Lukic said something really funny once, because at Arsenal there were 6 players, Gary, that had lost their driving licence through alcohol. And he said, I'm going to buy a minibus to pick them all up. Do you know? It was that bad at one stage.
It just shows you, though, across the game in those days, there was a real drink culture.
Gary, if you didn't drink at the start, you were in the minority. But if you were still drinking at the end, you were then in the minority. It won full circle. And I was much more comfortable at the end.
I would agree. I was the same.
Yeah, I'll take a glass of wine or, a pint of Guinness or whatever. But I've never taken a cocktail in my life. I'm not someone for shorts. I just... I've never really been an alcoholic person, full stop. I wouldn't have, I'm not a party animal, but if something happens out of nothing, I'm there till the end, to the last one to leave. But no, so it just didn't go together that well. And so I enjoyed the Arsene Wenger approach. And believe you me, when you talk to the boss, he used to smoke cigarettes when he was at Monaco. He'd had wine at the right time. It's about balance, really, Gary, I feel. And that's what a lot of the guys couldn't find for some reason.
It's interesting, isn't it, that you ended up back at Arsenal and it cost them
$2 million, yeah.
When basically for 50 quid extra a week, you'd have been there all the time, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Well, George Graham, when I invited George Graham to my testimonial night. We had at the Grosvenor Park. I was really concerned the game wouldn't sell out. It sold out within 4 days, and then the meal was the same, the Grosvenor Park, and we invited George Graham along. But I didn't expect him to stand there and give me a lecture at my own testimonial, because he said that this could have been the player that played more games for Arsenal than any other player. This could have been the player that won more trophies for Arsenal than any other player, if only he'd have listened to me. And it wasn't as simple as that. It wasn't as simple as that, because it was all about point of principle, as we've explained. The tribunal were laughing because they said, well, why didn't you pay him wages that, they wanted $500,000. Why didn't you pay him the wages then that reflected your valuation? So years later, George was still having a go at my testimonial. But I don't know if I could have actually worked with George all that long. Can you imagine? That would have meant I would have been with George for, 9 years. Maybe it would have been different. I'd have accepted. I could have learnt the way that they played, because you both played against the Arsenal back four. You used to rush out, didn't it? Yeah. In unison.
Oh, yeah. Hand up, one arm up.
Yeah. It felt like cheating. Whereas I was actually running with players, and I caused some issues at the start because I didn't quite understand that back four situation. But eventually when I got that, and I didn't get that, Gary, until 97, 98, by the way, when Tony Adams finally came back sort of to the person that I remember. And we then formed this youth team partnership, which was talked about, as being maybe the future of the club. We didn't really play well together until 97, 98.
Last question. How do you look back at your footballing career? And obviously you've been in subsequent career in television, whether as a pundit, as a co-commentator. I mean, you've had a life in football. You've had a life in football. You are quite an intense individual. You care madly about things. I've known you for so long. I also think your personality on the pitch is very, very different to off the pitch. You're a lovely guy. We all know that. But on the pitch, I would say you weren't necessarily a lovely guy.
When I put those red boots on, Gary, and it was part of the costume, then I pressed the button.
So how do you look back on your career, Martin? With great satisfaction, I would hope.
I don't have any regrets now. Do you know? I loved every minute of it. And I feel quite blessed that some of the players I played with, and you guys are in that list. Do you know, when you look back, you have to put those things to one side, the challenges, the competition. And really, Gary, some of the people I played football had the privilege to play with. I joke now they played with me. I didn't play with them. They played with me. I can tell my grandson now, and I said this to Henri when he scored his goal. I ran to him to say, I'll tell my grandson I played with you, to give him the enormity of how good he was. He didn't know how good he was. And now I can do that. He's 2.5 years of age. Soon I'll be telling him the people I played with. And I think that's the way to look at it. I tried to make the best of what I had. I had a difficult journey, but I got there in the end. And it made it more satisfying. It almost counted for double, that feeling of success when it finally came.
Well, Martin, I tell you had a great career. It's been a delight to work with you on screen.
Gary, you've not done bad yourself for 25 years. I hope you go for another 2 or 3 years at least.
Who knows if you believe certain newspapers, but we'll see.
You'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Okay. Martin, it's been a delight. Always a pleasure talking to you. Always a pleasure to
Thanks, Al. Apologies to Alan. All those times I kicked you out.
No apologies. I've got the bruises and scars. It's fine.
I'm sure you've got a few from him as well.
Gary was royalty. I couldn't kick Gary back in the day.
Couldn't catch me, that's why.
Yeah.
All right, great stuff. Thank you so much, Martin Keown. Get the book. It's brilliant. On the Edge by Martin Keown. That's it from me. Goodbye.
Well done, Martin. Thanks very much.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.